Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Welcome to Fearless Females. Thank you for joining me today. Today we have Lina Stock on the program with us, and I want her job. She travels for a living. She quit the corporate world, and I'll admit I would miss my finance, so I may not quit, but I do enjoy the idea of traveling and seeing new things and having the kind of adventures. But hers is a really non-traditional path, and everyone told her it wasn't going to work out. She couldn't do it. And I'm so excited to have you hear about her journey and the way that she is living really authentically, just the life that she designed and the way that she lives. So let's get started. Good morning. So we are here with Lina Stock. She is the owner of Divergent Travelers. And I am so excited to chat with her today. Like, if I had to have an idol that wasn't finance, Lina would be my idol. She has my dream job, and I am so excited to get to talk to her today. Thank you so much, Lina, for coming on.
Oh, that's so flattering. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and share my story and hope I can inspire other women to kind of break from the mold and follow their dreams.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's get started with my favorite question, which is always, what's your favorite book?
So I actually struggled with this question when you sent it over to me. I was like, I don't know. I don't really have a favorite book. I like to watch shows. I mean, I read everything, but then I started thinking like what book has had like the most profound influence in my life. And it became very clear that it was The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. And as a type A, very organized type individual, I tend to give an F about everything. And so that book really helped me kind of compartmentalize like what really matters and what I should be giving my effort to. And it's helped me a lot as a as a person and as a business owner. And it's really just offered a lot of clarity. So I would say that's my favorite book.
That's really interesting because I do think that I had a person that I was speaking to just recently, and she's like, I think you get the idea that it's just a spreadsheet. She's like, in the scheme of things, is this really the be all and end all of like, is this really 20 years down the road what you're going to remember, or is this just a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
So I love that idea.
And then I kind of think back to like some of the concepts in the book as I'm approaching different things, and he talks about an F jar. And so like, I always think like, okay, your F jar is full and like, you don't give those out for free. Like you really got to like, you have a limited amount of them. And so you really want to think about like how you're designating that type of passion and energy throughout your day and your life and the things that you do. And so that's really helped me a lot to just like de-stress and declutter my life. And that's been really, I think, monumental in, being successful long-term as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. I'll have to look at that because I am one of those that scatters attention far and wide. And then I think you don't really focus in on exactly what builds you and brings you passion and makes a difference in this world. So, well, thanks. Yeah. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to look at that. So tell us a little bit about your journey. What do you do? How did you get where you are today? Talk to us just a little bit about where you're at and how you got there.
Sure. So in today's sense, I would say that I am a business owner. I'm self-employed. My husband and I work together and we have created our own company. And we do professional media creation for companies in the travel industry. We do photography and video. We also have a website where we share our travel stories, help people plan their own trips, and as well as social media. So we aim to inspire and above all, get people out there traveling and to share our adventures and to help people plan their travels. It's kind of a long story, but I'll make it brief as possible. I actually have a degree in finance. When I graduated, I know, right? When I graduated from high school, I was like, what can I do? I want to do marketing, but I was just like, which I really should have done marketing. 2020 hindsight. But I was like, I want to be able to like make money, So finance was where I ended up. And it wasn't my calling. Like, I don't regret that I did, but
I love it. Like I just told you, I'm like, I love what I do. I love finance. And you can see the look on your face. Like not everybody loves finance, Lorie. So I think that's hilarious.
But I'm grateful that I have that understanding. I think, having that degree, and then after I worked in banking and I also did a lot of advanced marketing stuff through high school and college. And all of that kind of is like what put me in a position to where I could be where I am today and be a successful business owner. So it's kind of like, there's no like one path. Like you have to have these little pieces that come together to get you where you're trying to go. At least that's what I really believe in. But anyways, long story short, degree in finance, ended up working in banking, always loved to travel. Always had an interest in photography, was also into horses. So I used to really show horses a lot. We used to own a horse farm. I used to work for Olympic riders. So that was something I was also very passionate about. But my other true love was travel. And so while working a full-time job, like I used to travel a lot. Like I had been to over 30 countries while working full-time, just squeaking out those long weekends and using all my PTO. And my husband and I got married and we went on our honeymoon in Southeast Asia. And it was my first time to Asia. And we did the dirty hostel thing, and it wasn't because we couldn't afford something better. I just wanted that like gritty, true travel experience. And it just happened to be our honeymoon. So we were sitting in a hostel one night, and the community aspect of hostels is great. And you meet lots of people from all over the world. And there was these people sitting there talking about how they had taken a year off to travel. And I was like eavesdropping from across the room. And I was like, can you believe what they're saying? They're traveling for a whole year. So it really piqued my interest. Like Americans don't really, we don't know anything about gap years. Like it's not part of the plan. The American dream is that you graduate school, you go to college, you meet somebody, you get married, white picket fence, have kids, work until you retire, and then maybe there's time for travel if you've done everything right. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the track that we were on. And we hadn't really thought about anything other than just using... It's just harassing me. Sorry. So that was kind of the track that we were on. And we didn't really think about anything else. And so that really was that moment. There was that little spark. And so I jumped over there and just kind of started having this conversation. And these people had like taken a year off to travel, and they were backpacking and had saved money, and they were just doing their own thing. And so I just basically became very obsessed with it. And so we got home from our honeymoon and I just started Googling, and then I found out about travel blogs. And the next thing you know, I was like, I got to do this. Like it was a calling that needed to be answered. And long story short, we ended up starting a website. We went to a conference, and people at the conference, this was back when like having a website and kind of doing this as a job was very new. Like it wasn't even really a career, and people were making career money out of it. They were just doing it with money they had saved or as a gap year. And so we went to a conference, and people were figuring out ways to make money, and they didn't have any business background. They didn't have the corporate experience that like David and I both had. And so we looked at each other and we're like, well, if they can figure it out, we should be able to take all of these years we spent in corporate America and really be able to do something with this. Mm-hmm. So we kind of wrote up a business plan, and it wasn't the main idea. Like the main idea was to go traveling. The business was just kind of like bycatch, if you will. And once we started traveling, we started figuring out how to make it a business. And then we're like, okay, well, this is going to sustain us for traveling. And just one thing led to another. And we started networking, going to conferences and building our portfolios and our client list. And here we are. I mean, we've been doing this full time for 11 years now. So yeah, it's funny how things work out that way.
I think that something that I was told years ago that I thought was really interesting, because I was on that trajectory. Always, you go to college, you get this, you job, you work really hard, and then you retire. That's like the way we were taught, right?
Absolutely.
And I had a friend that was like, she was talking about different family members that had made a career out of the things that they loved, their passion, what they love to do. And it was the first time I'd ever really kind of considered that you could make your love into something that you also loved doing. Luckily, I love finance, so that's great. But I think that for maybe those that don't, that it's hard to think of like making art into something that is not only a passion but a career too. So you don't have to drudge through your job all day and then go home to do what you really love to do. You get to do what you love all day long. I think that's amazing that you've managed to figure that out.
Yeah. And it's definitely been a learning curve, because entering like as a blogger back then, I do parentheses because blogging wasn't a thing. Like people had blogs where they vented about things in their lives, but it wasn't a business. And like coming into blogging and making a business, we were kind of coming into a world that already existed and we were labeled as new media, but it was kind of this confluence of professional photographers meets professional writers, like travel writers. And we were here suddenly at this convergence between these two places that had already exist for print media and digital media wasn't even really a thing. And we were blowing it out of the water. And all of a sudden there was this sector that was now competing on the photography side, but also on the writing side, but we owned our own platforms. So we had full editorial control over everything. And I think that's why blogging has been elevated so much as part of this industry, because it's this place where we can connect with people in a direct way. And we don't have to go through hoops or have something that's just like one editorial track. Like we can put a personality behind it.
Yeah, I like that. Did you find that your background in finance and your background in corporate America, did that help with this whole process as you were building that business?
Oh, absolutely. Because that's, going back to that reference of like travel photographers and travel writers, it was like very much used to be about who you knew. And like weren't necessarily the best photographer all the time or the best writer. I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of them are great, but you didn't have to be if you had the right connections. Where having business sense wasn't something that was like built into a lot of these people. And even today, like we meet a lot of the older photographers that are still trying to, stay in the print publication game, and shoot for various publications. They don't have the business sense. They don't have, they're always asking us like at conferences, like, how do you make this work? How do you do this? You guys are so successful. You have so many clients. You're traveling all the time. And how do you make it work? I've been doing this for 50 years and I still haven't figured it out. It's like, well, we came from corporate America. Like, I don't know what it is, but it was having that mentality from the beginning, shaping us into being successful business owners. So we kind of always have that in the back of our mind of like, this is how it worked when we were in corporate America. And so we take that and we apply that to the successes, the tracks in our own business. And that's what helps us be successful.
That's so interesting. Like looking at travel and your passion and blogging as a return on investment kind of idea with, like a profit margin and all those traditional business sort of things. That's so interesting because that would be pretty unique in that space too, I think.
Yeah. And now, especially like with print publications essentially dying, a lot of the, freelance travel writers come to us, how do I start a blog? How do I do this? Like, how can I be successful like you? Because all of my old style avenues are drying up and I haven't built a business that circulates around my brand. So they're finding themselves, struggling as the world adapts to digital media and people who have, built really solid businesses, creating content in the travel space.
So, Lina, tell me, if you could look back and say, I'm so glad I did this one thing, like what is the best investment you've made in yourself through your journey?
I would say it's 100% just trusting my instincts. And I know that that's really cliche to say that, but like, even all the way back to the beginning, trusting that feeling that I had just deep down, like I need to do this. Like I remember approaching my husband and I was like, hey, want to quit our jobs and sell our house and travel the world for 2 years? And he was like, you're kidding. And I looked at him and I said, like, I need to do this. I don't want to do this. I need to do this. It was like this visceral calling that I had. I couldn't think about anything else. I couldn't think about where my current life was going anymore. Everything was just pointing towards this calling that I had. And I think the biggest investment I made in myself was to trust my instincts, to just go with that. And it was scary. I mean, liquidating your life and quitting your job and doing something that is completely unconventional with everybody from every direction coming at you and being like, you're wrong. You're doing something stupid. Like, you're throwing your life away. Like, it was just endless. And just being like, nope, there's something here, and just staying the course. And 11 years later being like, now I'm free. I get to call the shots of my own life.
How did you have the courage to trust those instincts back then? Because you're right, they're scary. I am not sure I could do it.
I don't know. And that's like, people say that all the time. Like when we meet people and we get to know them and we tell them our story, they're always like, wow, you guys were so brave. You know, that took a lot of courage. And it's hard to explain because it didn't really feel like that at the time. It's hard to explain when you just have this calling. It felt right, you know, so it really wasn't. I mean, there were times when it was like, oh man, are we sure? You know, like when you're thinking about that last paycheck that comes, you know, and when you're signing the papers on the house that you designed on a napkin in a Mexican restaurant and built yourself and you're selling it, you know, like, you're like, okay, this is getting real. But all along, we never wavered. There wasn't 1 second at all that I doubted myself.
Oh, I love that idea. I really do. I think that's that idea of being fearless. You know, it's not that you weren't scared to death. It's that you had the conviction that you knew this was where you were going. And you couldn't see 1 foot in front of your face as far as what it would look like. And you do have a bunch of people telling you, hey, this is crazy. Are you crazy?
Oh yeah. And it was coming from everyone, from my parents, his parents, our bosses, our coworkers, our friends. They were just like, at first they're like, oh yeah, that sounds so cool. And then when we started selling stuff, they were like, are you really doing that?
Yeah. That sounds cool in theory, but in actual practice, are we sure that's where we're headed? I actually, as you're talking about that, it's really interesting to me, the parallels, because, you know, like in finance in general, it's a lot of older white men. And there's not a lot that look like me and act like me. And coming at finance with this authentic sort of, you know, like, I have kids and I live in the real world and I'm very open and authentic about that. But you're told all the time, well, you can't do it unless you're, you know, in your 3-piece suit and you behave this way and this is the way you sell and this is the way you talk. And I feel so strongly that I need to bring my whole self to this piece. So I think that's really interesting, the parallels that we have there, just that maybe it'll give me the courage to be fearless and stand strong. Girls can do finance.
That's right. Girls can do it too.
So what about the worst advice that someone gave you? Can you think of a piece of advice that you're like, oh, that was really bad? And did you take the advice? Did you not take the advice?
Yeah, I would say it was all the noise around our decision, you know, just to stay in the corporate world, to not sell the house, to just stay the course, you know, like it was just constant. And people that we respect, you know, and people that we've taken advice from through all the years, you know, coming at us from different angles and trying to tell us that it was a mistake. That was the worst advice. You know, it really, people trying to tell me that what I was feeling was wrong and that I needed to sleep it off or just take a couple weeks and go travel and come back. And absolutely, we didn't take the advice. I didn't take the advice. You know, I was like, oh, heck no, you know, and there's some moments. My job offered me more money. You know, my husband's job offered him more money. And there was, you know, some sweet deals coming our way to try and disrupt it. And then later we found out that they were betting against us. Like, we literally had office fools going to see how soon we would be back. Yeah. So yeah, suffice to say, we did not take their advice. And you learn who your friends are, you know, and I mean, I don't expect people to understand, you know, like, not everybody's wired to take chances or disrupt their lives or uproot, you know, everything they have. And it wasn't easy. And yeah, we didn't listen. I didn't listen.
So did you go back? I mean, did some of those people that were telling you, don't do this, how many years has it been now? Like,
we've had the business for 11 years and we've been traveling for 10 years full time. So
So 10, 11 years on, have some of those have they come back and said, yeah, you were right or not?
And no one's admitted that we were right. Even our parents, like we're both very close with our parents. I'm very close with my parents, and they've never said, well, you were right. They're very supportive.
Yeah.
I think they don't understand. They don't understand how it works. How can you make money on the internet? Like, so there's a lot of explaining and just trying to put references between like what we do and like something that's maybe familiar.
Uh-huh.
Or just explaining that like it's like any other business owner, like we're like any other small business, around.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't have a brick and mortar. We work from our computers. But yeah, nobody's been like, oh yeah, you were right. Like there's just a lot of people who just kind of disappeared in the void. And
yeah, that's interesting. It really is interesting, your idea about you kind of find out who your friends are. I think there are certain situations where you go through where you just you really find that bedrock of people that are on your side no matter what.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And like so many of the people in the corporate world that we spent so much time with, you work with people, you're with them 40 hours a week. They're your family. I mean, your coworkers are your family one way or another.
Yeah.
Whether it's toxic or it's great or whatever, they're still your family. And it was just people like that who are just totally betting against you. And then when you don't come back, to prove them right, then they just literally you never hear from them again. You're just like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
What about looking back? Is there a situation that you would have handled differently that you wish, if you knew what you know now, you would have gone back and handled that situation a little bit differently?
Are you talking like business wise or like picking up and leaving wise, or?
Yeah, just in your journey. Like you've had a professional journey here. You own your own business. You do this blogging for a living, but is there something that you're like, knowing what I know now, I would go back and change the way I handled that or the way I did that thing?
Sure. There's not a lot. There's been little things here and there. Pretty good. I'm pretty good at really feeling out a situation. Having clear goals defined, I think, is super important. And that kind of helps avoid some of that. It's inevitable that you're going to get into that. I mean, there's things that we've done, decisions we've made in our business that I don't want to say we regretted. I'm really a no regrets kind of person. I try to make sure I have like good conviction behind my decisions and it's going to work out how it works out. I'm a firm believer in that. But there's been little things, in the beginning when we were growing, we were doing a lot of collaborations with peers that were in the same space as us. And they, they didn't end well. It's like where you do your half and then they would just ghost you or they disappear, or it's stuff like that. And it's essentially just like not doing your due diligence on people and just believing that everybody's in it for the right reasons, but then realizing later that they're not, like some stuff like that. But that's just business. You learn that stuff. You kind of, yeah.
If you had to go back and do those situations over again, what did you learn from it that you would change and do differently then? Just do like more due diligence or?
Yeah, just doing more due diligence, especially like our community, like it's big, but it's small at the same time. Like our community is all over the world. We all work online, however, and the network of, clients and people who do this at the top level is small. Like we pretty much know everyone. And then the newcomers that are coming in, because it's a low sum entry, our industry, but it takes a lot to get to the top. Anyone can enter, but to be really successful, you gotta know what you're doing. I think it would just be doing better due diligence, doing some research, finding out what people's motives are potentially, checking in with other people that they've worked with and figuring out what their experiences were like. Because a lot of times we would figure out after we'd had a bad experience that several other people had those same bad experiences. And if we had just asked around, we could have saved ourselves a headache.
That's really good advice. That's pretty insightful and works across like all sorts of different industries. Like a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, but there are other people that do know if you just ask, right?
Right. And I have this bad habit of just believing everybody's in it for the right reasons. And I want to believe that people are good, and so I've learned my lesson through the years that as much as you want to believe that everyone's intentions are pure, that a lot of times they're not. So you learn those lessons and, it kind of exploits your weaknesses in a way, but it helps you figure out, where you really have to be on those types of situations. And like I said, do your due diligence and ask around to make sure that, the situation you're putting yourself in doesn't hurt you or your business.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you still maintained your fundamental belief in humankind. Like it hasn't made you into a...
It depends on how long I've been in the airport or stuck on an airplane, but for the most part, yes. Ask me after a 30-hour flight.
Oh my gosh.
For a 30-hour travel day, I mean.
Yeah. I've had a dream of Southeast Asia for years. I love traveling. And so I finally booked something and we're going in January. And then I looked at how long the flight is going to be. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's not a short travel day.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gearing myself up for it half a year out. So what about if you could go back and talk to your younger self, really, literally like, your 20-year-old self, your 21-year-old self, right at the beginning of your journey, when you were in finance, in the corporate world, like, is there something you would tell her?
I love this question. And I really think that I would say you're right where you need to be, because I wouldn't be where I am if I wouldn't have done the things I did then. And I feel like all of those things and decisions that I made then is what led me exactly to today. And I know that's a little cliche and cheesy, but it's true. Like I don't live in a regretful type mental state. And I feel like the decisions that I made and the experiences that I had all shaped who I am and kind of set me up to be that person who could be like, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah.
And had I not done those things in my 20s, like when I was young, then I might not have had the courage to do it in my late 20s, really.
Yeah, that's so interesting because a lot of times, you do look back and you're like, man, I would have told my 20-year-old self to start traveling earlier or something like that. I love that you are looking back and saying, hey, you know what? This is part of your journey. It's part of your path.
Yeah.
Stay where you're, do these things, have these experiences.
Yeah, I feel really strongly that had I not taken the steps that I did in that like crucial time of my life, that I maybe would not even have gotten to that point. And it wasn't that many years either, like from 20 to 29. Like we started traveling when I was 29 full time. So we started our business when I was 28, which is young. It's young to start a business. So like I can understand why people were like, you're screwing up your life. But when you just know. I don't know.
So Lina, what scared you the most when you started out on your journey? And you can answer this from the point of view of like the 20-year-old, or you can answer it from like giving up the corporate world and going into this new phase.
I will say hands down, it was leaving a reliable paycheck because we saved money. We liquidated all of our assets. We had made a lot of good decisions in our 20s. So we had real estate, we had lots of toys and, vehicles and whatnot, and had made good financial decisions. That finance degree. And we basically liquidated everything to fund our new life, and now I look back and it was just like, it was business startup money, and it kind of has like that sweet ring to it where it's like, I liquidated my old life for my new life. And had we not set ourselves up in a position for that, then we wouldn't have had the capital we needed to literally just set off and travel the world full time. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that from that moment, I had always had a paycheck every 2 weeks. Since I left high school, I was working. I had a paycheck every 2 weeks. I had a cushy corporate job and reliable income. And so like when that last paycheck came into my bank account, I was like, okay, it's real now. And I designed the spreadsheets. And we would track all of our finances. I had a daily budget set up for how much money we could spend each day because I was trying to maximize how many days we could be on the road. We planned our route to like do the expensive countries first before we got into the cheaper countries. And then we did things like volunteering and help exchange and work exchange to kind of make the money last longer. Because when the reliable paycheck stopped coming, like you could then watch the balance going down in the bank account.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That would scare me to death.
Yeah. And we knew we had a plan, but when you're watching that and you've always had money coming in, and I remember like the first month, I was just like, it's still in the back of your mind, you're thinking to yourself, it's fine, I get paid in 2 weeks. And then you're like, no, not anymore. Yeah.
So when you started, were you planning on like, this is the rest of my life? Or were you planning on, hey, we've got 2 years, I've got a budget for 2 years?
So it started as 1 year and quickly became 2 years before we even left.
Okay.
And then it was going to be, I guess it was just going to be however it worked out, and like we had started the website and we knew we were going to make a go at like doing some business stuff with it. But also like our first 2 years, we really wanted to make sure that it was a genuine experience for us. We didn't want it to just be built around building our business. We wanted to go out and actually see the world, experience the world, go where we wanted to go, do the things we wanted to do. And I think having that big amount of money from liquidating all of our assets really is what led us to the place where we could fall in love with that lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And we didn't hold back. We traveled everywhere and did all the things we wanted to do. And we were honing our skills and, writing and working on photography and video. And yeah, I don't know.
Did either of you have any like marketing or blogging or writing experience before this? Were you were finance? Did you have any?
So I did a lot of advanced marketing classes through high school and college also. And so it was something that I had a really good understanding on. Like I understand marketing for whatever reason, my brain computes that really well.
Well, I'm glad yours does.
Yeah. Like I said, like I should have went into marketing, but I went into finance. And then my husband, he did sales. And so we kind of have this like perfect balance of, marketing and finance and sales that we bring to the business. And that balance, we balance each other out really well too, because salespeople like to spend money, marketing people like to budget and make sure you're getting a good return on investment. And then you add the finance in. And then like in terms of our skills, like I was always into photography, always, even from a young age. Like my mom had a really nice Pentax old style film camera, and she used to buy me the little junky, one-shot ones. And I was always mad that her pictures were clearer. So from a very young age, I could kind of delineate between quality photography and non-quality. And so I was always taking her camera. And so I kind of self-taught myself on her Pentax, and then just always did it as a hobby. Like I enjoyed photographing horses when I started traveling after I turned 18. I never left the country until I was 18. As a small caveat, I started getting really into travel photography. I loved just taking pictures of everything around me. And then I'd come home and I would show people. I was that annoying person, like come over for my stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like the photography thing really came natural. And the writing, like I started blogging, I think in 2007, just for myself. Like I was on one of the travel pod website, where anybody could start an account and then you could write about your travels. And so I started writing about all of our travels to like the 30 some odd countries that we traveled to while we were working corporate life. And so that was just, I like to write, and it just evolved.
Evolved. That's great. Just as a quick side note, how is it working with your husband? Like, is that uniquely challenging, or is bliss all the time? Like that's a question inquiring minds want to know.
People ask all the time, like, how do you guys spend so much time together? Honestly, I don't know, because it just works. It's bizarre how it just works.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's not that even like we're the same people. Like we are very, very different people, but we're highly compatible. And we have this communication style in our relationship, where we can talk about work and we can turn that off and not talk about work. And we're both just very passionate, and we just both say everything all the time, and it just works. And we do spend all of our time together. We work from home together. We travel together. We do business together. But I also will travel solo sometimes, but yes.
Yeah. I love that. I just wondered if I've interviewed other women who work with their husbands, and they just said there's like unique challenges there with that.
Yes and no. I mean, it's not any different than having coworkers. Like when we're working on work, we're working on work. and both of us just have that understanding that like when we're talking about work stuff, it's work stuff. And we don't let that, or at least we try not to let that kind of come into our personal life, even though our work is our personal life. Like it's gray lines. It's a lot of gray lines. Like I won't lie, but we're pretty good about it. Like we've been doing it for 11 years now. So we kind of have a good dance and yeah.
So what about any unique challenges because you were a woman? Is there anything that you felt was unique, or maybe there wasn't, and maybe it was just I've talked to women who are like, oh no, this was a true blessing.
Well, the travel media landscape, photography and writing is heavily dominated by men. It always has been. And I think that just comes from the perspective of like travel was always seen as something very exotic, challenging, and hard. And women were not doing it. Women were not setting out and becoming professional photographers or travel journalists or, going to foreign lands. And so even when we came in, it was still heavily dominated by men. And so like for a woman, like I could say that I've done a lot to kind of like make my way in the industry. I apply for a lot of awards. I make sure that I'm always speaking on panels and like putting myself out there to kind of give a more balanced view of like, look, I'm a woman, I'm a young woman, and I can do this too. And I have won a lot of photography awards in spaces where historically men would always win. Mm-hmm. And so then I start entering my stuff, and then all of a sudden my name starts popping up and they're all looking at each other like, well, who's that? They're looking at all the guys in the room. It's like, no, Lina's a woman's name. It's me. It's something that I am acutely aware of. And so in the name of all women who want to be in this space, I am constantly trailblazing and putting myself out there and trying to work with the big dogs and network in the big arenas and just make a name for myself as a woman, because there's so few of us that have been able to do that, forge a path in this type of industry and make a name for themselves.
I guess I didn't realize that it was so male dominated, but it makes sense that it would be, huh?
Yeah. And, and I'm talking about conventional like travel photography and writing, not influencers, modern day influencing on social media. That's a completely different ballgame. I'm talking about like true accolades, like being featured in National Geographic and, those types of bylines. And like, that's stuff that we really strive for in our business. And my husband is great. He supports me 100%. And there's times where people will bypass me to talk to him, even though it's the same business. And he's like, she's the boss. And he'll just walk away. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. I'm the boss. So yeah, we're both committed to forging ahead and making way for more women in this industry.
I love it. Yeah. I have that sweet spot in mine as well. I want more women in finance, and I keep trying to convince them it's super fun. So
good luck.
Lina, what are you the most proud of?
Oh, I would say that I had the courage to start, that I followed that little voice inside of me and took it seriously, that I wasn't just like, oh yeah, well, everybody dreams of doing something different with their life. Like I'm very proud of the fact that I stuck with it, that I actually did it and saw it through, and that I'm successful, that now I have everything I ever had in corporate America and more, plus my time and freedom, to do what I want with my life. I think that's what I'm most proud of. I mean, all the accolades and recognitions and stages and places I've been, I mean, like that's all just nothing really when it comes to the fact that I trusted myself.
Oh, I love that. You had faith and you invested in you. You were trusting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Any advice for a young woman? So if you're talking to someone who wants to go down this journey, you're already super successful at it. And, with the idea of that it is fairly male dominated and you want more women in that space, what would you tell her?
Just trust your gut. Trust your gut and don't be afraid to pursue it. If it's truly what you want to do and you're passionate about it, trust yourself, and be there to prop yourself up. Don't let the naysayers tell you can't do it, because you absolutely can do it. I quick and dirty, but I try to encourage people in that way. And that's what I say. It's like, trust yourself, be your own biggest cheerleader. Even if there's others that are trying to tell you can't do it or you can't be as good as somebody else, know yourself, be confident in yourself and and you'll get where you want to go.
Is there something like there are days when I am super confident in myself and you are kind, you are beautiful, you are special, all that sort of stuff. And there are days when I'm like, how are you so dumb today? Like, is there anything that you do that kind of helps you with those confidence on those low days?
Just remember why I do what I do, because I definitely have those days too. I have days where I'm just like, why can't I get anything done? Or like you send out some pitches and it's like you get nothing back but no's. And you're like, why? What is it? Like, is my photos bad? Or, and like you start to doubt yourself. But then you realize that none of that has anything to do with you, and you really have to be comfortable with who you are as a person, who you are in your work, and be confident in your skills, and really take to heart that most of the time the stuff going on around you has nothing to do with you. And that's kind of how, that's how I get through, the rough patches. And being a business owner is to just know that I'm fine. I'm right where I need to be. I'm doing what I need to do. My work is up to par. And I mean, it's not about me. It's about them.
I love that. That's really something important to remember, is that sometimes it isn't about you, and you've got to trust your process and trust what you're doing is the right thing to do. Well, Lina, thank you so much for spending some time with us today and going through your journey and just talking about it. You've completely inspired me. I'm not sure I'm quite ready to quit my day job yet, but maybe I will be a little bit more fearless in my travel and be a little bit more fearless in my life. So tell me, if I've got one of my listeners that wants to connect with you, how does she get a hold of you?
Sure. So you can hop on our website at divergenttravelers.com. And we're also on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, YouTube, at Divergent Travelers. That's the best way to find us.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your experience, and thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.